was Christmas like in the workhouse during the Victorian era? Stick around and you'll find out. Hello there and welcome to Findmypast Family History Expert Hour with me, Rose Goodall. You might notice the name change. I'm debuting that this week for you all, and it's a pleasure as ever to be with you today. Now, do let us know where you are tuning in from today. We've got Ellie in the comments. Please do say hello to our lovely Ellie. Let us know where you're tuning in from. I am in London today. Oh, well, it's been sunny actually after quite a dull week. It's actually been quite lovely today. So yeah, do let us know where you're tuning in from. And I can see we've already got Rosie, and it's almost dark in Shropshire. Yes, we're sort of at that twilight time, isn't it? But the perfect time, I think, the winter, for just settling down with a cup of tea, hot chocolate, for some family history, some stories, and we've got something of a Christmassy theme for you today. And I can see more joining. We've got Kim, we've got Karen, Jill, Daphne, and thank you everybody for your congratulations. When I last spoke to you, I was having difficulty seeing your name, so I can see you again this week, and thank you so much for all your well wishes. I really do appreciate it. Right, let's get cracking. So we have a busy session. It is always busy. So we're going to go over our new records of the last fortnight. There's some great ones in here. Oh my goodness, there are many rabbit holes for you to fall down here. We've also got our question of the week, which is, what genealogy gift would you like to receive this Christmas? I'll say that again. We've got, what genealogy gift would you like to receive this Christmas? Do start putting your answers there in the comments. And then we're going to be looking at the story of Lucy Christmas. Now, this I suppose is one of my ultimate rabbit holes that I fell down recently. Now, Lucy Christmas, as a young woman, found herself in the workhouse and in Liverpool. So we're gonna be looking at the remarkable story of her life story, and then we're also going to be looking at what Christmas was actually like in the workhouse in the Victorian era. Right, so let's get cracking then, because we've got a lot to get through. So let's delve into our new records of the last fortnight. And we are in London and Middlesex with our new Russian Orthodox Church records that we have added this week. So these join the Middlesex Baptisms Collection and the Greater London Marriages and Burials Index. It is a small set, but provides a fascinating window on the Russian Orthodox Church in London. And we do have images, as we shall see. We've also got further additions to the Greater London Burial Index. So we've got nearly 6,000 new records for the Church of St Catherine Coleman. So this was a parish church in the City of London, near Fenchurch Street. It goes all the way back, its history, to at least 1346, and remarkably, it escaped the Great Fire of London, although it was rebuilt in 1741. So I pulled out a little picture for you there. That's from the Illustrated London News in May 1920. Now, a few years later on the 20th November 1926, the last ever service was held in that particular church, and it was sadly demolished, so it's not around anymore. Now, these burial records, they're old. We go back to 1666 and all the way up to 1812. I pulled out a record here from one of the earlier records, because you know that I always love to go back to like the earliest time, and this is from the 30th of March 1666, and it relates to the wonderfully named Lettice Delver. Lettice Delver. And we also get her occupation here, which I think is just wonderful for one of these older records from the 17th century. And she was described as an old maidservant. Bless Lettice. Perhaps she had succumbed to the plague that began in 1665 and rolled into 1666. Now, finally, on this particular page, we have the Episcopalian church members for Scotland. And these records, again, we go back into the 17th century. It's 1661 through to 1861. And these provide the names, as well as some biographical details, such as parents' names, parents' occupations, for those members of the Scottish Episcopal Church, which is the third biggest Christian denomination in Scotland. Right, now we're going to stay in London now for our next trio of records. Oh, but before that, I wanted to just look back at our Russian Orthodox records, because we have images for these, and I haven't quite seen anything quite like this as part of our collections on Findmypast. So these records are in Russian, and this is the marriage from 1907 of Fyodor Fyodorovich Romanov. Probably not one of the sort of the royal family Romanovs, and he married Evelyn Mary Catley. So Evelyn, she's English, and you can see her name thankfully picked out in the Latin alphabet, which is helpful in this case. I don't have any Russian, but if you're struggling with these images, the ages are also a good giveaway, so that can help you link up the transcripts with the image. So yes, onto London, our further London records, and I can see some answers coming through for the question of the week. Keep them coming. Yeah, Ellie, I know, it's great. Some real special transcribing has gone on there. Now we have added this week over 1.2 million records to rate books from the Southwark area, and these span the years 1880 to 1935. So this is part of our continuing partnership with Southwark Archives. So there will be more things coming, more wonderful things coming from Southwark down the line, and this is just one of the sets. So the rate books, they cover every 5th year. So we've transcribed every 5th year. So this provides some vital inter-census details for you. So address information, the name of the occupier and the name of the owner. Now, we also have over 80,000 new records this week, which have been added to the Southwark Poor Law records. Oh, I just adore this particular set. We're going to take a deeper look, and just a fun fact about Southwark: it is actually London's oldest borough. I lived there for a little while, and I did not know that. And these poor law records, they go all the way back to the 1630s, and we go right up until the 1860s. And they cover a range of poor law documents, which we'll take a look at in a second. Now, the poor law was something that was put in place from 1600 all the way through to 1920, and they were put in to address various, to implement various measures to address poverty. So the 1601 Elizabethan poor law system established parish-based relief, and this is funded by local taxes. So divisions were made between the so-called deserving poor, like the elderly or the infirm, and the undeserving poor. So these were, the able-bodied unemployed. The Poor Law system was shaking up in 1834 with the Poor Law Amendment Act. And this act was notoriously harsh. It centralised relief, but set up workhouses. More on the workhouse later. Now, eventually the system became obsolete. It was replaced with a broader state welfare policies. Now, finally, we have more new marriages joining our Greater London Marriage Index. So these come from 3 parish churches, really in the City of London and East London. That's the Savoy Chapel, St Catherine by the Tower, and Bromley by Bow. And we've got over 25,000 of these joining us this week, and they come from the years 1681 to 1837. And we've got a lot. We've got a rich coverage of the 17th and 18th centuries, as well as the Victorian era today. So it's great. The Savoy chapel marriages are particularly fascinating, and it's worth just covering this because it's a fascinating story. So just some background. So in 1754, there was an act called the Hardwicke Act. This was passed to crack down on places where marriages were performed without a proper licence or bans. And this is quite prevalent in an area called the Fleet in London. Enter John Wilkinson, who was at the time the incumbent of the Savoy Chapel. And he believed that his chapel was extra parochial and a royal chapel. So he thought he was therefore exempt from that particular act. So between 1754 and 1756, despite many, many warnings, Wilkinson, alongside his curate John Grierson, issued their own marriage licenses, and they married many people during this time period at the Savoy Chapel. You can see a picture there of the Savoy Chapel from the Illustrated London News in the Victorian era. Now, the pair were both eventually arrested, and sadly both died en route while they were being transported to America. John Wilkinson died in Plymouth. So really fascinating sets for you there. And Ellie's popped a link in the chat there to the blog with all the new records of the week. So back to rate books now, which I'm obsessed with, I will say that. Now, these rate books, they are organised by street, and you can actually search by address, which is what I did, because I mentioned I used to live in the Southwark area, so I searched my old street, Tabard Street. And you can see here that you get the details of the names of the occupiers, and if they were renting, if they were tenants, you also get the name of the owners as well, and you also find the event date, as well as the details of the rates that needed to be paid. So this could be the poor rate, like we were just talking about, or indeed the water rate. Now, this record is from 1900, and it's from Fox's Buildings, which is near St George the Martyr in Borough. So if you come a bit south from Borough Market, that's where that is. And at this time, the area was super poor, very dense with slums, and it was one of the first areas in London to have slum clearances. And what I found really interesting is that there is one man in this case who is John Richard Gover. He's a judge, and he owns these apartments, these flats, these buildings in this place called Fox's Buildings. And you get a list of all his tenants going down the side. So with these records, you can quite literally find slum landlords from the early 20th century and previous to that. So these rate books are just invaluable for shining a light on the socio-economic makeup of Southwark from the Victorian era and well into the 20th century. They're great for street history as well. Now, in doing something similar and going way back into the 17th century are our new Southwark poor law records, which have been scanned from the original document. And they are lovely. So there are 6 types of poor law documents as part of this collection, which I'm going to run through quickly now. Now, first up, we've got examination books. They're on the left. And these documents are representing an inquiry into a person's settlement or residence eligibility. So in order for the poor relief to be provided for them, they had to prove that they had a tie to the parish. So in these documents, you'll find details like an individual's birthplace, their work history, their family connections, all with that aim of establishing the legal parish, the parish that they belong to. So this record is from Martha Bell. It's from 1799, and finding such detail around Martha's life from this time, well before censuses, it's a gold mine. We learn that she's a single woman. I think she's got ties to Duck Lane over the other side of the river in Westminster. And we also learn that she's never been apprenticed. That's called out, had never been apprenticed to anyone. And at the bottom, we even have her mark. On the right-hand side, we've got an example of a bastardy maintenance order. So this forced fathers of illegitimate children to provide financial support, which would in turn lessen the burden of single mothers and their children on the parish. So this example is for a baby girl named Elizabeth, who was born to Mary Glover in 1828. Now, this order charges one Augustus Winter to provide financial support to the family. Now, next up from our poor law records are the removal orders. These were directives which relocated paupers back to their parish of settlement. So there's very much this sense of, finding out where this person belonged. That it had to be very stringently upheld. So we have an example on the left-hand side, and this ranges from 1819 down to 1823, and it shows the range of parishes where paupers were located to from Southwark, and it shows the range. It's very much in and out of London. So we go from Ramsgate, we go to Hungerford, we go to St Sepulchre in the city, Plimpton St Mary over in Devon, and Greenwich. And on the right, we have an example of the Southwark Poor Relief Payments from 1833, which provide a record of monetary and material assistance provided to paupers in the parish. Now, our last two poor law record types are our weekly poor records and penal bonds. And the weekly poor lists contain names of individuals receiving regular amounts from the parish, with the names of the recipients of such relief and the amounts given to them. And there's one example there on the left-hand side, and they're immensely thorough. Sorry, my cat is trying to play with the bauble next to my laptop if I seem a bit distracted. Panda behave. So this example is from Sir Catherine Cronin in 1844. And finally, we have the penal bonds. Now, these were legal penalties issued for failure to fulfill obligations, and we can kind of get the sense now that there are a lot of obligations. Panda says hi back. So these penal bonds were issued if you had failed to support your child or you'd failed to obey a relocation order. Now, we go really far back with these, right into the 1630s, and the example on the right is for one Elizabeth Pratt, and that comes from 1664, and it's so old, in fact, that it's in Latin. I can make out some familiar names like Newington Butts, which there's a street called that today, and Woolworth, of course. So there's lots for you to explore in these Southwark records. Now, last but not least, we're on to newspapers, and we have a wonderful bumper crop for you this week. We've got a trio of brand new titles. So we've got new regional titles, the Telford Journal and the Dudley and District Chronicle, as well as international title, the Trinidad Royal Gazette. This was a government gazette that was produced while the country of Trinidad and Tobago was under British colonial rule. And we have pages from the 1880s and 1890s joining us this week. It's full of official government notices, but we also get some lovely genealogical gems for us to enjoy, such as the names of those wanted by Trinidadian police. Oh, you can see Panda there. There we go. He's obsessed with my sun hat. There we go. So you'll find names of British soldiers and sailors who had deserted whilst in Trinidad. Really fascinating. I think I'm going to do maybe a session on this in the new year. It also lists those people giving licenses to sell wine and spirits. And we've updated 34 of our other existing titles as well. And we've updated 8 of our Scottish titles this week. And we've added nearly 1 million new pages. So lots and lots for you to enjoy. Okay, right, question of the week time. And what genealogy gift would you like to receive for Christmas? So I'll just take this off. 1 second. And I'll just go have a look through the answers while you can enjoy Panda there behind me. And just bear with me when I scroll back, because I can see some good answers coming through. Alan would like some replies from DNA matches. I hope you get those. Maybe people will be catching up over the Christmas period. Cheeky Daphne, subscription please if you're offering. Sarah, a set of books on Wexford Townlands recently published. Ooh, one of my direct Irish ancestors come from Wexford, so count me in on that one. Jean, I think there's been some sort of wishes to break down some brick walls, and Gina's is on the same line. I'd like to see positive details of my great grandfather's birth and death. I have his baptism details and all the census details, but he remains a mystery. Oh, fingers crossed we're gonna you get those details, Gina, and we break that brick wall down. And Jenny has already been given the best genealogy gift. We love to hear it. Photographs of my great-grandmother and great-grandfather on my mother's side, and a photo of a portrait of my great-grandfather on her father's side. The original portrait of which I remember as being hung on the wall of my grandmother's house when I used to visit as a child. That is so special, and family photos like that are just absolutely priceless. What a wonderful thing to have received. Ellen, we're on the brick walls to finally get that one record to break down my Kirby brick wall. I think when I was thinking of what I would answer for this particular question, it was definitely brick wall related. There is one really brick wall in my now husband's family tree that drives me mad, and yes, I'd love to break that particular brick wall. Just going through. Karen, thinking outside the box, time machine, time machine time. The only way I find my third great grandfather's parents where he came from, named Thomas Wright, and this is the thing that I will need to break down my particular brick wall with my husband's great grandmother from central London, who just doesn't appear to exist outside of the birth record and then her marriage record, but nothing about her parents. I'll do a few more. Georgia, a week's holiday in Northern Ireland. Sounds lovely. County Mar to see where my great-great-grandfather may have lived and look for his records in Brony. Yes, that sounds like a great trip. This is smart, right? Combining holidays with our genealogical research. I need to sort of think about this a little bit more to combine the two things. And Ellie's on a similar vein, a little trip over to Northern Ireland in pursuit of my nana's family. Oh, that would be grand. Shall we all? Can I come in the suitcase, please? No Northern Irish relatives for me. Southern Ireland though, so I'll pop along too. And just do a few more, and then so we've got Kathy. Love to find out who my grandmother's father was. She was born out of wedlock. One of my aunts knew who it was, but took that info with her to the grave. How very frustrating. Oh my goodness. This is always so tough when we come up with illegitimacies, and there is the knowledge there, but it's kept from us. And yeah, Ellie's already organising that trip to Northern Ireland in the marketing budget. And Nicole, we're adding Germany to the list now too, as some ancestors that came from Prussia. Can I come on that too, because some of my husband's ancestors come from Germany too, so we're all going on a big trip together. And this one from Sandy is intriguing one over on YouTube. I'd love to find my maternal grandmother. Henry Hall left the family in colour coats in 1936, never to be found since. Oh my goodness me. Well, that would be a gift and a half. And finally, Matthew, some sort of record of evidence of when my 3 times great grandfather was born. All I know that he was born in Cork, Ireland. Not sure if it's Cork City or County. Oh yes, it is a tough one. We know how hard Irish research can be. So all the best with your search there, and let's hope we get some of these genealogy gifts. So I'm going to delve in now. Talking of Christmas gifts, it's time for me to tell the remarkable story of Lucy Christmas. So this is going to take in the workhouse as well as Christmas and many other things besides. So I first came across Lucy Christmas in our Liverpool Workhouse collection. So it is a great collection of over 2.2 million workhouse records. They consist of admission and discharge registers, religious creeds registers, both of which provide a plethora of information, of genealogical information. Now, this particular record here, which is across 2 pages, I've pulled it out there, it's from the Liverpool Workhouse admission register. Now, it shows an 18-year-old Lucy Christmas entering the workhouse for the first time. Now, this is on the 28th of February, 1887. And I know we say there's a lot here, but when it comes to interrogating the original image, this is so important in this set because there's so much here to find out. So sort of as we go along, Lucy's column, this is Lucy's row rather, this is all the information we find. So there is a tick, there's a mark in the column for temporarily disabled. We then see that she is a member of the Church of England and that she is currently situated in the Lock. Oh, Karen, this is going to stay with me here on the basket makers because we've got some coming up. It's all, I think Karen and I have some kind of telepathic link by this point because a lot of the stories I tell seem to have links to Karen's family. So Lucy Christmas, she is in the Lock, whilst others are in the asylum or infirmary. More on that in a little bit. We also learned that Lucy is single and that she is a servant. And really heartbreakingly, there is an observation that she has no friends. So I guess that's the reason why she has come to the workhouse, right? That she has no friends. And Ellie's very kindly put the link in to this set if you'd like to have a little explore. And then in the final column isn't actually used for its marked intention. It's meant to record whether a person has ever received parochial relief before. But instead, it kind of gives reasons for people being there. So we've got entries like fractures, epilepsy. But Lucy's reads venereal. So I wanted to get a little bit more context about Liverpool workhouses. And to do so, of course, I turned to our newspapers. Now, throughout the Victorian era, the Illustrated London News provides a wonderful pictorial record of the times. However, as with most news outlets, it often reported on the things that went wrong, or sort of the accidents, the disasters, everything unfortunate. So this was the case when a fire ripped through the Liverpool workhouse in September 1862, and the resulting destruction was pictured here by the Illustrated London News. Now, this was some 20 years before Lucy entered the workhouse in Liverpool. But we get a sense from this illustration of those long, narrow rooms. You can see the remnants there of the metal bed frame scattered around, and you can imagine how closely these must have been stacked together. And meanwhile, something else I wanted to find out, and I hoped the newspapers would help me with, and they did, is the meaning of that particular location, Lock, where Lucy was situated in 1887. So there's an article there on the right from the Liverpool Daily Post from July 1912, and it's looking back at the history of hospitals in Liverpool. And it describes how a Lock hospital was for venereal patients, which, of course, for poor Lucy Christmas, it makes sense. So back to Lucy now and her records. She was discharged from the workhouse on the 17th of March, 1887, and she was back again by June 1887. And she was back again on the 13th of September, 1887. So she's in and out. And by September 1887, Lucy is now 19. So from this, we can deduce that her birthday is sometime between June and September. Now, this is something we need to hold on to. It's going to be an important factor in confirming her identity later on. Now, this workhouse admission register from 1887 again reveals that Lucy is counted as temporarily disabled. And we've got a religious creed register as well beneath that. And these registers, it's really important to remember they're more than just lists of denominations. We get more information again that poor Lucy has no friends. And the religious creed register also shows us how Lucy's third stint in the workhouse ended on the 8th of October 1887. Lucy's fourth stay in the workhouse began on the 11th of November 1887. Again, she was back in the lock. So we can deduce that whatever disease she was afflicted with had come back again and rendered her unable to work. For this 19-year-old girl, suffering with a sexually transmitted disease alone in Liverpool, I can't imagine how scared, how vulnerable she must have felt. And she stays at the workhouse, I think her longest stay here, and for a full 2 months, leaving on the 11th of January 1888. So this means that she spends Christmas at the Liverpool Workhouse. Now, local newspapers during this period, as we shall see, contain details of Christmases at workhouses in the area. So not only was this part of a very sort of Victorian virtue signalling that charity had resulted in these paupers having a good Christmas, it was also an important part of accounting of how those poor law rates were spent, right? Because the local people in the area would have been putting forward their money and it would be going to the workhouse. So you get great detail then on both these counts. So looking at the Liverpool Mercury from the 27th of December 1887, it says, and I quote, the inmates of the Liverpool Workhouse, Brownlow Hill, numbering 3,400, had their Christmas dinner yesterday. The fare being, as usual, roast beef and plum pudding, with 2 oranges, each as a dessert, in addition to which tobacco and snuff were distributed amongst the old men and women who were partial to these luxuries. Lucy Christmas, however, though, she would not have been part of those 3,400 people. That's an immense number. She was staying in the lock. But we have more info from the Liverpool Mercury, which says the large proportion of 2,400 sick and infirm were served in their respective wards under the careful superintendence of Mr. and Mrs. Bicknell, the master and matron. And what struck me here was the vast numbers of people in the workhouse. 6,000 at least, nearly. Now, it wasn't just they got a Christmas dinner in the workhouse. The Liverpool Mercury also describes how those in the workhouse were treated to a range of entertainment, which included music by the Industrial Schools Band, a Christmas tree, a performance by the Abercrombie Amateurs, a concert by the Cumbric Vocal Union, with presents also for the children. So in all, it sounds like a pleasant time, but as pleasant as really pleasant could be for those presented with the harsh realities of those living in the workhouse. Oh, and Ellie, we just have a request from Jennifer on YouTube, if you're able to pop the link in for the Liverpool Workhouses onto the YouTube live, please. Now, Lucy Christmas's reality, however, by the 21st of August 1890, 2 years after she left the workhouse, seemed to be much less harsh, as the next record we found for her was in our Lancashire Banns and Marriages collection. Happy ending. So on the 21st of August 1890, 20-year-old Lucy Christmas married 25-year-old John Jones, a quartermaster in the merchant service. Now, the marriage takes place at St. Silas's Church in Liverpool. So Lucy had stayed in the city. We can also narrow her birth date down, as she had not yet turned 22. So her birthday must be between the 22nd of August and the 13th of September. So our girl, she's a Virgo, just like me. But we also learn more crucially about Lucy's family, and that her father was John Christmas, a joiner who was deceased. Now, this key bit of information, this marriage record, will help us dive into Lucy's background and help us to understand just how she ended up in the workhouse. But first of all, we're going to go into the future a little bit. We're going to go into 1891, when we find Lucy living with her new husband, John Jones, in Birkenhead. Now, when I saw this marriage record, I must admit, I did despair. I think we all do when we find these more common names in our family history. But playing around with searching alongside Lucy, like directly searching in our census record collection, searching in that Liverpool area, helped me to find John and Lucy. So John he is working as a mariner on a tugboat, and so we remember he was in the merchant navy, so he's definitely got, yes, not a Jones, not a Jones. He's sort of working on the water, right? So that kind of ties. And also helping to confirm Lucy and John's identities alongside their ages is a stroke of luck. So in the 1891 census, Lucy's mother, Mary Christmas, I love saying it, she's living with the couple. She's a widow, which again tallies with the fact that Lucy's father, John, is deceased. Now, Lucy's mother, Mary, she's born in Frodsham, in Cheshire. Now, this fact then helped me tie this Lucy and this Merry Christmas to a family living in Chester in the 1871 census, and that's the bottom record there. So, this family, we have got John Christmas. He's 41 and he's a coachmaker, and he's born in Kensington. So coachmaker, in the marriage record, you'll remember he was a joiner. So building things possibly with wood, I think we can kind of tie that. And then the key thing really for me here is Mary Christmas and her birthplace of Frodsham. It's the same for Merry Christmas in the 1891 census. So we can say that this is our Lucy Christmas. And in 1871, she is 2 and she has an older sister named Fanny. So here we have Lucy Christmas's birth record, and we've got another. Rosie's got some Christmas connections here by marriage in Brentford. Lots of Christmases I think do come from the Greater London area, as we will see, and also John Christmas in this particular instant. He's from Kensington. So we have Lucy Christmas's birth record. She was born in Great Boughton, which is very near to Chester. Her mother's maiden name is Basley. So we've got 2 kind of unusual names there, right? We've got Basley, we've got Christmas. And importantly, the birth registration is in quarter 3, which puts us within that key time of July, August, September, within which we have deduced that our workhouse Lucy was born, more particularly late August into early September. Now we are able to build up a picture of the Christmas family. Of course, this was not so simple, as I could not find a marriage between John Christmas and a Mary Basley. However, the clue was in the 1871 census, with the inclusion of a son-in-law, 10-year-old William Owen. And this term, as we know, it's a tricky one at this time, so it can be used for stepson. So William Owen is John Christmas's stepson, and so likely to be Mary's son from a previous relationship. So looking for a marriage between a John Christmas and a Mary Owen proved to be much more fruitful, and they were married in 1868. And to note, they already had a daughter, Fanny Christmas, who was born in 1866. So Mary Christmas, née Basley, was previously married to Richard Owen. She had 4 daughters and a son with him. Richard passes away fairly young, and sadly so does John Christmas. So he dies a year after the 1871 census in 1872. Now this, I think, was probably the root cause of his daughter Lucy ending up in the workhouse some 15 years later. So as we know, Mary Christmas does not remarry. She's still a widow in 1891. In the 1881 census, Mary and her daughters Fanny and Lucy are living together still in Chester with a lodger, Mary Lee. Now, both Marys work as charwomen, notoriously hard work and underpaid work. And 14-year-old Fanny, she's already working as a dressmaker, but Lucy is still at school. So we can imagine for the women it was pretty tough getting by. They were without the sort of main male breadwinner. And we can't know for sure what happened as Lucy grew older. But given her diagnosis in the workhouse, perhaps she travelled to Liverpool to try and make some money, potentially falling into sex work. Liverpool, I think, is the key to this mystery. Something made Lucy leave Chester, her mother and her sister. So whether she left Chester because she was suffering these symptoms, which were too embarrassing, or she got them in Liverpool as a result of travelling there in a search for work. Both these scenarios account for her labelling as without friends. She was alone, and that is one thing that we know about Lucy entering the workhouse. But for Lucy, there is a happy resolution. When she marries John Jones, she seems to be reunited with her mother Mary and amongst family. So Lucy Christmas, who becomes Lucy Jones, she makes her own family. With her husband John, she moves to Birkenhead, so that's historically a part of Cheshire, and overlooking Liverpool on the other side of the Mersey, which I find is really apt, right? So Lucy's back in Cheshire and she's putting her time in the workhouse away across the Mersey. And although John and Lucy didn't have any children of their own, we shall see how they created their own family. So up top here, we have the 1901 census, which has John and Lucy living in Birkenhead with John's mother, Mary, who is 69 and working as a grocer and greengrocer. So there are 3 young people in the household with them. There's 18-year-old John E. Jones, 13-year-old Thomas Jones, and 3-year-old Elizabeth Jones. So John E., who is a tinsmith, and young Elizabeth, they are both down as adopted. And meanwhile, Thomas is enumerated as grandson. However, he is not Lucy and John's child, so he must be the child of one of Mary Jones's children. We find Lucy and John in Wales in the 1911 census, and Ellie and anybody else Welsh, please forgive my pronunciation. They are in Llangollen, a village in Anglesey, and I looked this village up and it looks absolutely beautiful. And it's not a random connection because, as per the 1901 census, John's mother is from Llangollen. And in 1911, John, who is 44, he's had a switch up of career, so he's working as a limestone quarryman. And they have 3 young children living with them. So there's Elizabeth Jones, 13, Gladys Wilkinson, 5. At least I tried. I did try. And Grace Williams, who's 12. And these are all enumerated as the couple's nieces. However, Elizabeth Jones is the same Elizabeth Jones from 1901. She was born in Penrith and is the right age. And we also learn from the 1911 census that Lucy and John never had any children. So that's we can have the definite proof there. On Lucy's row, there is the word none, and that appears under the children born alive column. And if we go through to 1921 now, we see that Gladys Wilkinson is listed as Lucy and John's adopted daughter. The family are back in Birkenhead, and John again is working at the docks. Rose is having I'm having Welsh. I need to honour my Welsh family by having Welsh lessons for Christmas. Maybe you can help me, Ellie. So the family are in Birkenhead, and we know that John and Lucy didn't have any children themselves. Perhaps they could not, given Lucy's diagnosis. It's really unfair to speculate, but what we do know they did was to create their own family of adopted children, Gladys, Elizabeth, John, and possibly Grace. And what I find so moving about this was the time that Lucy spent in the workhouse. I can't imagine how degrading that must have been, especially as she was confined to the lock. But she survived, she married, and she decided to share her love with children who perhaps didn't have anywhere else to go. Like when all that she had left was the workhouse. So maybe she was, helping to stop those children ending up in the workhouse like she had. And maybe I'm speculating. Well, I am speculating. I am romanticizing. But the fact that she provided a home to these children when she was so young, she was 18 and had nowhere else to go, she stopped these children from having to end up in the workhouse themselves, which I find incredibly moving. So Lucy and her husband John, they were survivors, and we find them living in Birkenhead in the 1939 register, where John is listed as a retired ship's rigger. And we also find, finally, Lucy's birth date. So remember, from our workhouse records and her marriage record, we had narrowed it down from being between late August and the 13th of September. Well, Lucy Christmas was born on the 11th of September 1868. So this is my final bit of evidence that ties all my facts together and this story. Now, Lucy passed away in 1947 and she was nearly 80. So what a life she had lived. She survived the early death of her father, the time in the workhouse, bringing up a family and living through 2 world wars. And what I love about Lucy is that Lucy is, by history's judgment, not a special person, not anybody of note, but through our records, we can see that she absolutely is, and we can tell her story as it deserves to be told. Now, meanwhile, I wanted to take a little bit more of a look at Christmas in the workhouse. And this, and thank you, Ellie. I very much enjoyed this particular rabbit hole. Now, this photograph shows what Christmas was like in the workhouse for those in the Islington Workhouse Infirmary in December 1905. And this was printed by the Penny Illustrated paper. And if you haven't come across this paper, oh my goodness, it's one of my favourites. It captures late Victorian and Edwardian life with illustrations and pictures. And you can see the decorations here in the ward, and just about the men in the ward who are dressed in their best, sort of standing to attention by the side of their beds. Now, for the story of Lucy Christmas, we use the Liverpool Workhouse records, but our census records, of course, contain details of those who were at the workhouse at the time of the census. So we have another Christmas now, and this time it is 10-year-old Benjamin Christmas, and he was at the workhouse in Limehouse in East London when the 1851 census was taken. He is described as a pauper scholar who is the son of a soldier. I turned to the newspapers to find out a little bit more about the workhouse of Limehouse. It's a bit of a mouthful, workhouse at Limehouse, and what it must have been like for people spending Christmas there. The Morning Post, which was published on Christmas Day, 1852, gives robust details on Christmas Day in the workhouse. And it was fulfilling that need, I think, to account to the metropolitan ratepayers. And I quote, the intention was to show where there has been an increase or decrease in pauperism in their respective parishes during the past year. So the article in the Morning Post actually details all the poor law unions in London, which includes the Stepney Union, where the Limehouse workhouse was located. So there were 4 workhouses in the Stepney Union. You've got one in Ratcliffe, one in Mile End, one in Wapping, and one for children in Limehouse. Now, this is where Benjamin Christmas was in 1851. And now for Christmas, we learned that those in the workhouse received a good dinner of beef and plum pudding with 1 pint of porter each adult, and oranges and apples for the children. And I wanted to find out a little bit more about Benjamin Christmas and what happened to him post-workhouse. Now, he was baptised in 1857 at the age of 14. And this is from this record, and this is from our Docklands and East End baptism collection. We learn his birth date, so the 14th of December 1842, appropriate for a Christmas baby, and how he was baptised at St Anne's in Limehouse on the 6th of May 1857, so as a teenager. So his address in 1857 is given as a children's establishment. So it's likely that Benjamin stayed in the workhouse, which provided education as industrial schools. So poor Benjamin, he would have experienced a lot of Christmases in the workhouse. But we learn more information about him too from this baptism record. His father's name is Reuben, and he was a basket maker. So this is where Karen's Christmas basket makers come in. I wonder if they related. So the 1851 census says that Benjamin's father is a soldier. I don't know, maybe that's a little bit of romanticism, I guess, to sort of escape the ordinary, add that romance of his father being a soldier. I'm not sure. And his mother's name is Louisa. So I went on a search for Reuben Christmas, and I found a Reuben Christmas in the 1841 census. But there was a problem here because this Reuben was only 4 years old, and Benjamin, his supposed son, was born in 1842. So this couldn't be right. So what has gone on here, I think, Reuben, his brother, has been listed as his father. His father was another Benjamin Christmas, and he is a basket maker. So a typical trade of London's East End. So this is the Christmas family. And we've got Benjamin Christmas, who married Louisa Reynolds in 1830, and they have at least 5 children. Their oldest son, Reuben Joseph, dies in 1835, and their second son, Reuben Joseph, again follows 2 daughters, Emma Jane and Louisa Maria. Now, as was the case with Lucy Christmas, Benjamin Christmas's father died young in 1844. So again, we can imagine that this was a trigger for his young son, Benjamin, to end up in the workhouse. Oh, we've got similar names here for Karen. And Henry Benjamin Christmas, born 1857, Spitalfields. Yes, this is the area. East London, Spitalfields. There are lots of basket makers and Christmas basket makers too. Now, in the 1851 census, Benjamin's mother, Louisa, was also in the workhouse, and she was in the Wapping workhouse, which we know from that Morning Post article was another workhouse in the Stepney Union. Now we see Louisa's occupation as charring. Again, that's reminiscent of Mary Christmas, Lucy Christmas's mother, who was a charwoman. Meanwhile, it did prove difficult to trace Benjamin. There is a death record for a Benjamin Christmas, sadly, from 1859 in Mile End Old Town. I think this might be him, whilst a Maria Louisa Christmas pops up in the 1871 census. She's living alone with no occupation. She's about the right age for Louisa Christmas, and she's born in Mile End, like it says in the entry in the 1851 census. But the fact that these is difficult to trace, I think, brings home how difficult it can sometimes be to find ancestors who fell into poverty. The bureaucracy of a normal, stable life might have been lost to them if they'd fallen out of the workhouse system on the streets or the like. And if they didn't have a sort of turnaround in luck like Lucy Christmas did, it can be difficult to trace them. And I know this from my own research. One of my brick walls, one of my female ancestors who has 2 legitimate children ends up in the workhouse. And after that, I haven't been able to trace what happened to her. Now, I've got one more Christmas story to tell. We've just about got time, and that is of Algernon Christmas. It's a wonderful name. And he is in a Stepney Union workhouse too, and this time he is at the industrial school, which is attached to Mile End Workhouse. And he is there in the 1861 census at the age of 13. Now, born in Stepney, Algernon is a scholar at the industrial school. Now, aside from reports about workhouses and how they spent their Christmases, newspapers can help to build a picture of workhouse life through job advertisements. So there was like this one that appeared in the Morning Advertiser in July 1872. Now this advertises for a yardsman and drill master. It already sounds a bit much. And yes, I agree. I think it sounds like something out of Dickens for a Christmassy novel. Definitely some kind of high Victorian Christmassy novel. This ad reads, the guardians of Mile End Old Town require for their industrial schools adjoining their workhouse a strong, active, intelligent, unmarried man without encumbrance between 25 and 45 years of age as yardsman. It continues to remain with and take charge of the boys before and after school hours to see that they are at all times clean and in good order, to teach them drill exercises, to superintend their industrial and other training, to see that their closets, yards, windows, knives, boots, etc. are constantly kept clean. So these descriptions of this yardsman's duty really bring home what life must have been like for Algernon and others at the workhouse industrial schools. So it's incredibly disciplined, incredibly regimented, and I imagine very, very tough. Now, whilst Benjamin Christmas proved to be something of an enigma post-workhouse, Algernon Christmas was an enigma for me before the workhouse. So tallying with his birth year, given his age in the 1861 census, there is an Algernon Cook Christmas who was born in Stepney in 1848. And no mother's maiden name is given, and this is as per the GRO records as well. So this kind of ignited some suspicions that Algernon may have been illegitimate. Yet to locate him in the 1851 census. Perhaps he went by a different name, and that inclusion of the two surnames there, that could hint to some illegitimacy. I'm not sure, but something did feel a little off. But Algernon, like Lucy Christmas, he got out of the workhouse and he married. In 1868, he married Caroline King. And we find them together at Libra Road in Bow in 1871. And Algernon is working as a steam wood sawyer. And curiously, he is enumerated as living next door to two Christmas families, John Christmas and Thomas Christmas. And like Reuben Christmas, John and Thomas are both basket makers. Oh, it got me thinking, is this a coincidence? Could they be related? Could they be related back to Reuben? Or are they related to Algernon in some kind of way? Has Algernon found some family? I'm not sure. I've not been able to prove that there's any relation. Did come across an example in another census of names being incorrectly transcribed, so being brought down from the name above, so perhaps it's just been transposed incorrectly, not sure. But definitely something to think about, a little wild card there, and to dig into a little bit further. And we can trace Algernon Christmas through the years, through the censuses, moving with his wife. So in 1881, the couple have moved to Walthamstow, and in 1891, the couple are still in Walthamstow, whilst by 1901 they are embarking, and Algernon is working as a general woodworker. And like Lucy and John Jones, they don't have any children of their own. But in 1901, a niece, 20-year-old Agnes Dowsing, is living with them. And by 1911, the couple are living in Ilford. And after 41 years of marriage, both are working still. Algernon as a packing case maker and Caroline as a dressmaker. Now, Algernon Christmas, he passes away in 1915 at the age of 67. From shadowy origins and from the workhouse, he's had a long marriage with Caroline, who we find living by herself in the 1921 census. There is something really moving, I think, about Caroline's form, filled out as Mrs. Christmas, in her home that she shared with her husband in Ilford, where they had lived since at least 1911. She is 70 and she passes away a year later in 1922. In the case of Algernon and Caroline Christmas, they don't have any children. So no ancestors will come searching for them. But I always think it is so important to tell these stories as well and remember them, as we can do that through our records. So thank you very much for joining me today. There I come back. It has been a pleasure as always. And also I did just want to flag before finishing, and the point from Karen here, and sometimes workhouse residents are listed just by initials, and yeah, absolutely, and it can be impossibly hard sometimes to trace those who went through those systems, especially when they're reduced to just their initials. So yeah, it's just their treatment in life and sort of treatment in death. It's so hard. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining me today. Have a lovely weekend, and I think this is the last time I'm going to see you possibly before Christmas, so happy holidays to everyone. I think we'll be back next week with the family history show, so take care, one and all. Goodbye.